Hi, I'm Alex from ANU Observer and I use any pronouns.
And I'm Alex from Moroni and I use they them pronouns. Before we begin today's debate, we'd like to acknowledge that it's been hosted on unceded Ngunnawal and Ngambri land and that sovereignty was never ceded. I'd also like to acknowledge that Waroni is a term stolen from the Wadi Wadi language and that we're striving to do better for reconciliation in the future.
For those who don't know, ANUSA is the Australian National University Student Association and is a $2 million organisation that provides services and activism for students. The club's officer at ANUSA is responsible for organising things like Friday Night Party, Bush Week, O Week, and is also the contact point for the clubs and societies on campus.
Let's get into the debate. So we'll begin for today. Millie, if you'd like to give us your opening remarks.
Yes, hello, my name is Millie McDonald, my pronouns is she, her, and first I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the stolen land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people and sovereignty was never ceded. So I'm running for clubs officer and it's because I really believe in the power of student unionism and how important it is that we can all come together in a social context as well as academic and any other context. My policy is based on three broad areas. So first, more social events outside of O Week, Bush Week, Friday Night Party, more equity tickets, and a centralised calendar to make it easier to find out what we already have going on.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Charlotte Carnes, I use she, they pronouns. I would also like to acknowledge that we are on the stolen land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples, and I think that is extremely important to emphasise, in any executive position, in any position in life really, in this country, but also I think as the club's officer, as someone who oversees events, I think it's important to acknowledge that, these events do take place on stolen land, and I think the responsibility of working with Indigenous people and amplifying their voices and their wants is crucial. I'm running with Power and Community. We are an independent and activist and experience ticket. I've been the Secretary of Womberin. I'm currently an SR, an IB college coordinator. I am currently your ANUSA CAS rep, College of Arts and Social Sciences, and these have all equipped me with skills that I think I can bring to the role. I think it's imperative that the club's officer is political and that the role is treated as such. Community is an expressly political thing, and I think a large part of the club's officer role is empowering and uplifting communities, whether that be in people's clubs, whether that be assisting departments, outreach into the community. That is a role that is important in ANUSA. I think also the main way that most students engage with ANUSA is through O Week, Bush Week, and Friday Night Party. So I think it's critical that the club's officer is there in facilitating active engagement and assisting with the mobilisation of students.
Charlotte, to ask the next question. What information and consultation have you used to create your policies and where is the demand from your policies coming from?
Sure. So I've consulted the ISD, DSA, Women's Officer, Queer Officer. I have consult time set up with the Indigenous Officer and BIPOC Officer. I've consulted with clubs presidents, the President of IAC, current clubs officer. My ticket has further consulted with clubs presidents. My entire policy is predicated upon consultation and information that already exists. I have an entire policy about departments and clubs and improving their relationship to make sure that everyone is empowered within their communities and to create and further facilitate a culture of inclusivity. I think clubs relies on continuity more than any other role. I mean, that's a large statement to make, but I think the fact that the largest part of the club's officer role occurs in February relies on certainly the continuation and continuity between roles. So I think the fact that I've consulted with the club's officer and other departments is crucial to that. I've talked to students, undergraduate and postgraduate, about what they want out of O Week and Bush Week. That's a large part of my social policy, is implementing the feedback. I've got 3 O Weeks behind me. I'm a third year, so I have a lot of opinions about what I want out of O Week, and I know everyone does. My social policy relies on demand and informed feedback, and I cannot emphasise the importance of consultation and respecting the autonomy of departments in this role.
Millie?
Yeah, of course. Well, I also believe that consultation is so unbelievably important in developing a policy. We're one person, we can't experience everything. So I've of course consulted with a bunch of different departments, especially in experience of equity tickets. There's a really great policy at the moment that all equity tickets must be given to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, which is really important, and that needs to be expanded, which has been seen through consultation with not only departments but regular students who don't know how to get engaged in clubs or don't know what's going on or like how to get an equity ticket. That's been a really big theme which is seen through my consultation with regular students and just the general community, which I've found.
Would you like your ad reply?
Yes, I would. I would like to clarify that there is already an extensive equity policy in place that does demand all events have equity tickets for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, and regular equity tickets as well. There is also an equity grant that has been brought into practice this year that I would like to continue to facilitate and make clubs more aware of. I also have a policy about allowing clubs to keep the surplus that they make from SEEF grants, which would allow them to put more money towards creating equity tickets and making those events more accessible to low SES students.
Sorry, so the next question is, COVID-19 has dealt a blow to the on-campus social scene. How do you specifically plan to rectify this? Millie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, of course. We've seen a big hit to the social scene, as you just mentioned. Someone who's newer to this campus, it's been really interesting coming into this with a really fresh perspective and not who's like been negatively affected or been shut down on this campus in particular. I'm from Victoria. I've had my social struggles over the last few years, but in coming with a fresh perspective, it's very clear that the social scene is struggling with just a few times a year where we can come together. So my policy is based on having more events outside of that, and that's coming from having more live music events, even obviously this is coming back to consultation, seeing what students want out of a social scene, not just in O Week, Bush Week and Friday Night Party, throughout the year where it comes to like potentially having like opportunities for students to have open up their own markets on campus or like even union nights at Badger or wherever we can make that work. It's to increase opportunities for students to come together more than just 3 times a year, and that's because when the reality is we're not locked down anymore, we can come together without so much struggle as we have all seen over the last few years.
Yeah, Charlotte.
I'd like to begin by saying I think it's a very difficult act, but a very important one of balancing obviously the needs of disabled students, of people who are immunocompromised in like we don't live in a post-COVID world, unfortunately. We live in a post anyone giving a crap about COVID world, I guess. But making sure that events are still accessible and are still friendly to people who have those needs, I think that's imperative. I've consulted with the DSA about this. I think I have a policy about Market Day as well. I'd like to move towards investigating no tickets at Market Day instead of having like a counter, because obviously we still have capacity needs, as well as continuing that as an outdoor event, one that allows for people to move fluidly in and out of, and making sure that quiet hour is really important and is respected by all clubs and departments. I also think that I believe firmly that the way that we can revive our social scene is by empowering clubs, and that is the express responsibility of the clubs officer. To me that looks like people need a reason to go to events, and if they have a community, they will go to those events, whether that looks like department events, clubs events, res hall events, however that may seem. I think it's about empowering those communities, bringing them together, uniting them, and I think facilitating that as the clubs officer is very important. Yeah.
Millie, you've got 30 seconds if you'd like to reply.
Yeah, of course. Empowering clubs, obviously so important. Everyone has different interests. One union can't hold an event for everyone's interests, and that's why clubs are really important, especially with disabilities, and holding COVID-safe events if that's what people prefer. And of course, in terms of empowering clubs, we've got a specific policy around that, around having a centralised calendar, so people can just open up one forum and see what's going on, and helps people organise events too. As someone who tries to organise events, it's hard to, I don't know what every other hall's doing, for example. So, yeah, sorry. Empowering clubs in terms of a centralised calendar is going to be really crucial.
So the next question will go to Charlotte first. So the post-pandemic world has seen multiple turn away from alcohol-based events and parties. How will you cater to people not interested in events like Friday Night Party or are concerned about the continued spread of COVID-19?
Yeah, I think that, like it or not, we do have to care about COVID-19, and I think obviously we still have a responsibility to engage with students who don't care about that. As I said, I think empowering clubs to run their events and making sure that they are informed about what the COVID protocol is, because at the end of the day they do have to follow that. supporting them, making sure that those events are made accessible and are widely advertised so that more people can join in. You know, market day is obviously a day where everybody comes in and everyone decides they're going to join a bunch of clubs, but it's about like the follow through on that, right? So I think making sure that people actually know what they're getting into with events. Per alcohol and Friday night party, I mean, obviously you don't have to drink alcohol at Friday night party, but unfortunately that is the reality. I have experience at my hall with running events that are non-alcoholic, and ensuring that there is a community of people that feel safe going to events that promote a non-alcoholic culture, and ensuring that you balance the needs of those students, which I think is done through community consultation, and that's something that I'm very keen on and care deeply about, and it's written all throughout my policies, consulting students on what they want to see in their events.
Millie?
Could you just have a question again?
Yeah, so the post-pandemic world has seen people turn away from alcohol-based events and parties. How will you cater to people not interested in events like Friday night party, or who are concerned about the continued spread of COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. So COVID-19, again, still a massive problem. We're seeing with different variants, who knows what will happen next year with different variants, and it's really important to make sure we have accessible testing like we've had throughout this year. So then people are aware of the COVID situation and holding events which can be safe. Again, a market day outside, super important, can be challenging in Bush Week when it's the depth of winter, but consultation, working through those issues, that's why it's really important to have a clubs officer, I guess. And in terms of alcohol-free events, well, we are looking more towards a world where people are turning away from alcohol. There are health impacts as well. So again, creating those safe environments, and it's responsible RSA where people aren't struggling or like, so that makes it a safe event for the people drinking and as well for the people not drinking who, like if you've ever had to sober rep an event, you can see how you face problems with that, and watching people who has either had too much to drink or behaving in a not great way. So again, in OWA, coming back to those crucial training programs in saying, making it safe to be an alcohol-free environment and making it a really good environment where both, I guess, preferences can be mixed and blended.
Charlotte, would you like your 30 seconds right to reply?
Sure. Sorry, I think I might have spent a bit too much time on the COVID element there. Yeah, I think it's important to look at, you know, what is the demand for alcohol events. Like, obviously that's a huge part of the university experience for a lot of people, and that's not something that we should neglect. Those events do exist, you know, Week and Bush Week for a reason, and they're a keen way that people, you know, meet other people. But I think that ultimately catering to all students is the responsibility of the clubs officer and is important in the student union, and engaging with those people and finding out what they want and what kind of events they would like and how they can feel supported in those alcohol events where they still want to go is crucial.
Alright, so Millie, this is your kind of specific question. So one of your policies is this idea of a centralised calendar, which you've talked a lot about. Centralised calendars as a policy do pop up quite frequently when it comes to clubs officer and kind of the social officer before that. So our question is, how exactly will you get clubs to pitch in on this calendar idea? And is it not already more work for clubs executives? So you have a minute and a half to respond. You also have 15 seconds if you'd like to think about the question.
Yeah, so basically the key thing to being able to get clubs to pitch into this centralised calendar is making it accessible and easy, and that's when we're going to have a really extensive consultation process where we look at different softwares and that kind of thing, and then widely advertising it so everyone knows about it. It is really important to have a community and a clubs community, so when people all work together to make sure everyone knows what's going on, because clubs will see the benefit in this is clubs try so hard to get people to events. It's a real struggle clubs face is that no one knows stuff's going on. So to put it in a central, like there's going to be demand for this. That's basically the most central element of this, I believe, is this demand for this. So clubs will happily put up their event on a software as long as it's easy. That's where consultation's really, really crucial.
All right, Charlotte, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to add something on to the question.
I mean, yeah, our current clubs officer has been working on a transition from the ANUSA website through to QPay for centralised events this year. It has not taken effect yet, but that will be utilised next year for sure. And I think it's a great idea, the idea of a centralised calendar, which is obviously the reason why that is beginning to exist. And I think it's the club's office's responsibility to support clubs and to make sure that, if they're experiencing a burden with promoting their events and making sure that those are accessible to the broader student audience, that is their responsibility to help and support them in promoting that.
Fantastic. So, Charlotte, your specific question is...
Yeah.
So, your opponent has criticised ANUSA for focusing on O Week, Bush Week and Friday Night Party. Do you see this as an issue? And if so, how would you expand ANUSA events throughout the year?
Can you repeat that, sorry?
Yeah. So your opponent has criticised ANUSA for focusing on O Week, Bush Week and Friday Night Party as the 3 main social events this year. So do you agree if this is a problem or not? And if you do agree, how would you expand ANUSA events throughout the year?
Okay. I think that, as I've said before, O Week, particularly, but Bush Week and Friday Night Party as well, have historically and continue to be the primary way that most students engage with their student union. I think while I would love to run more events as the club's officer next year, I think unfortunately it is just a touch unrealistic, because I do think that, with the merger of the former social officer position and the club's council chair, the highs and lows of each of those respective elements now coincide with one another. So when the social calendar is at a high, the club's calendar is at a low, and when the club's role is at a high, the social role is at a low. So I think the way to actually go about creating a better social scene and amplifying that, particularly in the relapse from COVID, I think that it's about, as I've said, empowering clubs, making sure that people know that clubs exist, going to those events, utilising the QPay calendar that will exist next year, and making sure that clubs feel supported in promoting those events. Because at the end of the day, the club's officer has the role of, engaging with students, because we do run O Week, Bush Week and Friday Night Party, and that's how students engage with us. I think that, the responsibility to get people involved with ANUSA starts there, but it definitely doesn't end there, which is why I also have a policy about stalling in O Week with my education candidate, Beatrice Tucker.
Alright, fantastic. So, Millie, you've got 30 seconds to add something onto that question.
Yeah, so really, O Week, Bush Week and Friday Night Party are the beginning of an engagement with our student union. If we're going to mobilise students to work together to achieve certain social causes, or even just create a stronger community coming out of COVID when people felt really isolated, we need to come together more than just a few times. And so that O Week is a great opportunity to begin engagement, not just have it then. And so yeah, it's got to be an ongoing process, not just a few times. Clubs are really, really important. We've got to make it all coincide together. That's crucial.